Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day. We're going to wait just another minute or so, see if anybody else joins in before I get started going through the presentation for the day. Okay, I'll go ahead and dive in and get started for today's presentation. Appreciate everybody joining in on the call today. We're going to be going through and discussing some of the sales routines and utilities that are available in GP. So for the agenda, I'm going to cover a fair amount of the different routines and utilities. So we'll talk through the aging routine, the statements, the AR combine and reconcile process, paid transaction removal, and then moreover on the utility side, sales doc reconcile, the AR combine and reconcile. That might be a typo. Sorry about that. And then the various remove history options that are available out there. There's quite a lot of those. I won't touch on each one individually because they all kind of do essentially the same thing. If you can understand one, I think it's easy enough to understand the rest of them. So we'll get to that a little later today. So brief overview. My name is Landon Morris. I'm a senior consultant here with Implementation Specialists. Been here for just over 2.5 years, I believe. And I've been working in the GP ecosystem for 12, 13 years now. So pretty familiar with utilizing a lot of these routines and utilities within GP. So covering the routines first. Routines are going to be commonly used tasks. You should be running these on a pretty consistent recurring basis. Oftentimes we'll see our customers use these routines as part of their month-end process, or at least running these on a monthly basis. You can certainly run them more often if you'd like, but I think at least having a plan to run these monthly is a good idea. It's just part of your business routine. So posting your scheduled payments, aging the AR documents, assessing and creating finance charges, processing your customer statements. I'll touch base on that one as well, just briefly on some of the really cool features that you can use in GP if you're not today regarding statements. Writing off document balances, and then removing, which always sounds very scary, but it's actually just moving to history, any fully paid or applied documents, specifically on the sales side. So grab the little screenshot of what my routine section looks like. You can get to this in GP if you go under the sales module. So in the bottom left of your GP, open up that sales module. You should see the section for routines, and then you'll see these listed in there. You may or may not have the same options that I do, just depending on what level of security you have in your GP. In my case, I was signed in as SA, so I've got it all. If you find that you don't have access to any of the routines or the utilities that I'm going to cover today, and you think, oh, it'd be really nice if I can have access to that, you'll want to check with your IT department or system administrators, whoever it is that manages that security in GP, and they'll see what needs to be done to get that added to your profile. All right, so talking through the aging process. This is one that I think all customers should run on at least a monthly basis. There's not usually a need to run it more often unless you have any of your aging buckets in GP set up to cover something less than a month worth of time. So when you go into your aging and you say, hey, we look at stuff based off whether it's in the 0 to 30 days old, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, those are all in 1 month ranges. You're probably safe to run this on a monthly basis. However, I do know some of our customers, their very first aging bucket is anything 0 to 15 days. Then they've got another one that's 16 to 30 days. Since those are less than month buckets, it would be a good idea for them to run their aging routine on a probably every other week process. So that just might be, a Monday morning task that somebody's in charge of. So when you run this, it's going to take all of your open documents in AR and update them to say, hey, this is now in aging bucket 2. It was in 1, which meant 0 to 30 days, or 0 to 15 days, whatever your business has that set up as. But we're going to move it into aging bucket 2, the 31 to 60. When it does that, it then takes the sum of all of those documents and it pushes that back upstream to your customers, so that when you go to the customer aging summary data window in GP, you get an accurate reflection of the total dollar amount that each of those customers has in aging buckets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can have up to 7 aging buckets in GP, commonly 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. But that's going to let you see when you're looking at each document and when you're looking at the customers as a whole, you can quickly see what aging bucket those are sitting in. It's very helpful for your reporting. Get a quick snapshot. You go, hey, anything 0 to 30, we're not particularly concerned about. But if it's 60 to 90, we might want to flag those as orange. And then 90 and over, maybe those get flagged as red. Might be a chance that those are potentially not going to get paid. Running this on a regular basis is a great way to keep all that data up to date in GP. All right, the next routine is your statements. Again, I think most of our customers that run statements out of GP are only doing so on a monthly basis. You can get these statements to print out to a PDF, or you can email them directly to your customers. There's some setup that's required to pull that off within GP so that you can email your customer statements, but our team's worked with a lot of customers to get that set up. The initial setup is usually just a few hours, and then you are ready to go from there forward. You no longer have to print those, fold them in an envelope and mail them out, or print them to a PDF and then attach that PDF to an email that you type up manually. You can just have the system automatically email each customer a copy of their statement. So if you've got any interest in doing that, if you're not utilizing emailing statements in GP today, and you'd like to, let us know. We can help you get that set up. Your finance charges. So this is a routine, again, usually just run monthly, that just assesses a finance charge on each customer's account based off whatever criteria you've got on that window that you can see. I've got a screenshot here. It'll assess that finance charge based off of what each customer's finance charge settings are. Some customers might have a $0 finance charge, in which case you're not going to charge them anything additional for having an outstanding balance. You can also assess that finance charge on each customer based off of a hard dollar amount or a percentage of the open balance. And then you can see on the screenshots here, you've got the ability to set minimum finance charges, the minimum balance before it would even assess a finance charge, and then which aging buckets are going to be included. There's a drop down there for current or only stuff that's 90 days and older, or whenever you decide you want to assess this. And you can run it multiple times based off different customer ID ranges or customer classes. that you can control and say, hey, for this class of customer, we have these settings. For some other class of customer, we might have a different balance or minimum finance charge that we want to assess. So by running that, you can get those finance charges created on their account, and they'll now show up on that statement. All right, your write-off documents. So this is where you can come into GP and go ahead and just write off the amounts that you want, again, based off of each customer or customer class if you wanted. You can assign what the limit should be. You can create one write-off per customer. Let's say a single customer's got 5 invoices out there that you're just going to write off the balances for. You could create one write-off for that customer, or you could create 5 separate write-off documents, one for each outstanding invoice. You'll get those put in place. You'll hit the preview button. It'll pop up a window. From that window, you can actually edit and control which write-offs you create for each invoice or for each customer before you hit the process button to actually create those write-offs. So this is a quick and easy way to assess, hey, anything that's hanging out there that hasn't been paid yet, do we would potentially want to just write that off officially, so that it's not going to continue to hang out there as having an outstanding balance. All right, and then our final routine we'll talk through is going to be the paid transaction removal. So again, that always sounds very scary. People are like, I don't want to remove anything from my system, and that's okay. This won't. What this actually does is it just moves those transactions from open, meaning they're still out there for you to edit or make changes to in terms of applying payments to invoices, or vice versa, applying credits to invoices. Being able to write off some balance on those, use them to assess finance charges. If they're open, then they're eligible for all of that. But once you've moved them to history, that's your way of saying these are done. And so when you move these into history, that's also going to clean up the list of documents that you'll see when you go to the, let's say, the apply sales document window. You've got a payment and you're looking to apply it to a customer's invoice. You can see a list of the open invoices in there. Well, if there's an invoice that's been fully paid, you really don't need to see it in that list. So moving it to history is a great way to keep it in the system, to really, kind of file it away where it belongs. It's also going to speed up the performance of GP in some of your areas, just because when you're going to do those lookups to get a list of open documents, you're not going to have nearly as much in that list. So it's not going to take as long for GP to load that list of quote unquote open documents, because so many of those, which have been fully paid, or in the case of a payment's been fully applied, you can go and just move those into history. Now, one word of caution on this, and this is just from some recent experience that I've had with a customer. You may not want to move things into history as soon as they've been applied. If you do, there is still some way to unapply those from history and move them back into open, but it requires some extra steps on your part. So, it's weighing out the pros and cons. You might want to wait some amount of time from fully paying an invoice and or fully applying a payment before you move it into history, just to make sure that you're not moving things the day they've been applied, because perhaps it might come back and you find out actually that customer payment they sent us that we applied to these invoices, that was a non-sufficient fund check that we got. So we actually need to unapply the payment because it's not a valid payment. There's some additional steps you'd have to take if that payment and those invoices have been moved to history. It's still doable, but just something to be aware of and kind of think through, what maybe that 90-10 rule, how often do we think that might happen, to where it's beneficial to just go ahead and move them into history versus we want to keep them open for some amount of time, just in case we need to make some changes to how we apply each payment to each invoice. So before I move on from the routines, which again are kind of scheduled, typical tasks you should be going through, I'm going to move over to the utilities section, which are typically more like as needed type processes. If anyone's got any thoughts or questions, I'll give you just a quick second to throw those into the chat. I can address those before we move on to the utilities. Okay. All right. So let's continue through. Let's talk through the utilities that we've got available for us in the sales module. So these are tasks that really just need to be ran on an as-needed basis, although it's not uncommon for customers to plan on running them monthly, quarterly, or at least yearly, just to make sure that all of this data, which in the perfect world is always accurate, always correct, there's never any problems, everything adds up the way it should. Sometimes it doesn't. And we're aware of that, Microsoft's aware of that, and so there's these built-in utilities that are available to allow you to go through and clean up some of that stuff. So some of them that I'll cover here, reconciling your AR documents and customers, reconciling your sales documents if you use that SOP module. So those are going to be your quotes, your orders, invoices, also back orders, fulfillment orders, returns. So all of those types of transactions. The processes for combining your AR customers. If ever you find that you've got a duplicate set up in the system, one customer got set up twice, you can merge those together. And then the removing of sales and AR history. And that one is truly removing. So we'll talk through that and if and when that might be a good idea and what the repercussions of that might be. All right, so starting on the reconcile. So there's reconcile receivables, and that's the screen I've got screenshotted for you here. There's several different options in that upper left section to reconcile. So this is going to reconcile your customer summaries, current and overall. You also have the option to reconcile the period summaries that GP keeps in the database for, essentially how much business did you do with that customer in any given year or month, right? It'll make sure that those numbers are accurate. It should be the sum of all of that data from each year and month if you look at the transactions that justify those totals. And there's also an option in here, less commonly used, but not a bad idea, for the batch information reconcile. It just makes sure that any of your sales batches, and that's both sales transaction and receivables, make sure that those batches accurately reflect the number of transactions and the total dollar amount of those transactions. So, if you've got a batch and that there are 3 invoices sitting in that batch that are $1,000 a piece. When you go to the batch, it should say 3 transactions for $3,000. If you look at it and it says 2 transactions for $2,000, well, we know that's wrong. And depending on your GP setup, you may have it set so that it does a validation before posting to make sure that the number and the dollar on the batch matches to the number and the dollar of the transactions in that batch. And if they don't match, it won't allow you to post. So a batch reconcile is a way for you to clean that up. It'll just go through and say, yeah, there are 3 transactions for $1,000 a piece, so that's $3,000. Your batch gets updated. Now you can post without issue. I think running this reconcile is a good idea to do at least once a year, just to make sure that you're getting up-to-date information on your customers, and then specifically on the fiscal and calendar year options, where you can control those summary breakdowns, just to make sure that those match accurately, especially if you plan on doing any kind of reporting off of those summary numbers. We're going to make sure that they're completely accurate and up to date. Okay, the next option you've got under the utilities are to reconcile your sales documents. Again, these are your sales transactions, quotes, orders, invoices, returns. And make sure that they are also completely in sync with where they should be in terms of making sure that the line items reflect the right quantities, the costs, the prices, making sure that the header of that of each transaction matches to the sum of all the lines. So again, let's say you've got a line item on an unposted invoice, and it's got a quantity of 1 and a cost of $10. The extended cost should also be $10. If it's not, a reconcile would fix that for you. It would run through and say 1 times 10 equals 10, so that's what the extended cost should be. If you've got 3 lines like that, then the total would be $30. If you were to look at the invoice header, the total cost of that invoice should say $30. If it doesn't, the reconcile will fix that for you. So this is, again, a routine that, or a utility that doesn't necessarily need to be ran on any kind of scheduled basis unless you want to. But it's not a bad idea to run this, maybe once a year, just to make sure that everything properly adds up. And then you've also got the option in here to remove any completed documents. Typically, I'll see that used on the orders function. So if you've got a sales order and you transfer that to an invoice, oftentimes that order may stay out there in the open status because some amount of quantity on one of the line items wasn't available for you to invoice it just yet. So that order stays out there, and then later you do invoice that remaining quantity and the order still stays out there. You can use the remove completed document radio button there to say, I'm ready to go ahead and take those and move them into history, and it'll go ahead and do that process for you. When you're in here, you can run this on individual documents using the from and to and just setting them to the same document number, or you can do ranges if you want to focus on just your quotes or just your orders or just your invoices, if those can be sorted alphabetically without mixing in, some orders and some quotes get mixed together. All right, their customer combiner. So this is a utility available, again, if you've got duplicates in your system, a real world customer of yours that is set up in GP 2 times, maybe with slightly different spellings. I'll never forget an example I saw where one of the first times I came across this was a lot of confusion over, it was Joe's Barbecue. One was BBQ, one was spelled out with the word barbecue, and no one could figure out why, this invoice is over here, but an invoice from last month is under a different customer. Yeah, we finally found out that somebody had misspelled or decided to spell out the word barbecue instead of just using the abbreviations. So using the combiner, we said, let's merge these 2 together so that all of those invoices can be found under one customer. We can get an accurate reading of the current balance with everything combined instead of it being split out across 2 different customers. And therefore you can compare that balance to their credit limit to see if they're getting close to their limit or if they're potentially at or over their limit. You don't get an accurate reading from that if they're spread across 2 different customer records in your system. So you can manually enter your source, which is the one that you're going to do away with, and then your destination customer, which is the one that you want to keep. You're saying move everything from the source to the destination. It'll run through and merge all of that data together. But oftentimes, this is a project that customers might have us work where they'll give us a list. You can just get a simple 2-column list of source and destination customers. Let's say put them in a spreadsheet, and column A is your source, column B is the destination for each one of those, and then we can use the import file option here to bring that file in, and it'll just run through them all. One at a time and merge them together as needed. Now, the biggest caveat on this customer combiner is if you have any third-party products installed within your GP environment outside of just the base, Dynamics GP. So for example, if you've got Winsoft, that manages the service and the job cost side of your organization, or several other add-on components, it may not know that it needs to go to that section of the system and combine some of those records. Out of box, it's pretty focused on just GP. So if you have any additional products besides GP, check with our team first. We'll make sure that you've got what you'll need to merge everything together properly without running into any errors, and without it just essentially orphaning some of the data in your system, which might still reference that source customer, even though that source customer no longer exists in the list of customers in your system. That is going to get really ugly. So our team can help make sure that we've got what you need to merge that together. And then finally, the remove history option. Again, there are several of these remove history options that are out there. These are used to actually purge that old data from your GP. Now, a lot of customers say, absolutely not. We want to keep that data in history indefinitely. You are absolutely welcome to do that. You just keep increasing the size of your SQL database server to make sure you've got space to hold all of that, but there's not a wrong answer there. If you want to keep it forever, you can absolutely keep it forever. We've been working with several of our customers lately on looking into possibly archiving some of that. So there's some different tools available for that to say, we don't need it in our main GP company database anymore. It's from 10 years ago. Nobody's really going to be referencing that on a regular basis. That being said, we don't want to just get rid of it completely. So you can set up an archiving process to move that to a different database, but it's still accessible should you need to get to it. However, if you decide to go ahead and move through with the remove options, you can remove receivables transactions, you can remove distributions for those transactions, you can remove your period summaries, sales transactions like quotes, orders, invoices, and returns. Each of those come with the ability for you to filter down to just certain customers or customer classes. You've also got date cutoffs to say only remove stuff up to this certain point, so that you don't remove data from just last week. You can say, hey, we're going to do a 10-year cutoff, and so anything older than 10 years, we're ready to just remove that from GP. And you can go through each one of those and remove those pieces as needed. One really important note to make there: if you were to ever remove history for a customer, let's say you removed their history from 2010 and back, and then you went to that reconcile window, which we looked at a little bit earlier, and you decided to reconcile a fiscal year for that customer, and you reconciled 2009. What's going to happen is, because there are no transactions in the system anymore from 2009, because you opted to remove those, it's going to set that customer's balances in 2009 to 0. It's going to say you didn't do any business with them back then, because according to the transactions, you didn't. It's important to understand the repercussions of running these, but it can be helpful for those of you that have been on GP for a decade plus. It can certainly be helpful to remove some of that older information out of the system, so that you're really only looking at stuff that's recent and relevant. It can speed that process up for your users as well. So that covers the various routines and utilities. Certainly not all of them, and even the sales module. And there's a whole other series of these routines and utilities in purchasing, and inventory, finance. So if you've got thoughts or questions on how those work, whether they're right for you to run, reach out to our team. We are happy to provide you answers on that. Make sure that you're getting what you need out of your GP system. So if you've got questions, you need help, you can reach our consulting through support@iscorp.biz. If you've got any sales questions, you can reach us at sales@iscorp.biz, and we will be happy to assist. So I'll throw it back out to the attendees today. Any thoughts or questions, feel free to send those over in the chat. And if not, then we are good to go for the day, and everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Landon, it looks like we have one question.
Sure.
Write-off documents. Can you enter which expense account the write-offs are posted to?
Let's see. Let me see if I can get to that. I'm trying to. There we go. Write-off documents. Can you enter which expense account the write-offs are posted to? Yes, there should be a setup option within your GP where you can control what the write-off account is that gets used. Take a quick look here. Yes. So you can set your write-off accounts at the posting level across your entirety of GP so that you've got a default in there. And then you can also, I believe you have the ability to set that per customer as well if you wanted to. If you wanted to be able to specify, that this certain customer over here, I want them to use a different write-off account for whatever reason. Yes, you can control that. That's a great question. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone joining and enjoy the rest of your day.